of Hello friends. As promised, I am back with my third video in the series on Negotiable Instruments Act, and in this video I will be throwing light on limitation, jurisdiction and various types of disputes that arise in the course of check bouncing case. दोस्तों, आज हम लिमिटेशन, जुरिस्डिक्शन और विभिन्न प्रकार के डिस्प्यूट्स के ऊपर में रोशनी देंगे. So, as far as the limitation is concerned, in the other two videos also I have thrown some light, but here I will be discussing in detail. Limitation starts right from the time of issuance of check. So when the check is issued, check is filled with date, payee name, amount, both in words and figures, whether account payee, self or bearer, and then the signature. And once the date is put on the check, the validity of check starts running. The check remains valid for a period of 3 months from the date of issuance. Once the check is issued and once it is deposited in bank, if it is cleared, okay. If it bounces, then along with the check, bank gives us a check return memo. From the day we receive the check return memo, from that date, we have to issue a demand notice for payment of the check amount to be made within 15 days, and that notice is to be sent within 1 month from the date we get it from the bank. Now, this is second limitation. The third limitation is कि in the demand notice we have given 15 days time for making payment. So if the drawer of the check makes payment within 15 days, then no offense is committed and the matter is over. But if the drawer of the check fails to make payment, then on the 16th day the offense is complete and cause of action starts. So here the limitation is 15 days. From 16th day, another limitation starts for filing of complaint petition in a proper court of criminal jurisdiction. In that court, we have to file the complaint petition within 1 month from the date of cause of action, that is from the 16th day. 16th day from the day the drawer of the check received notice, the so-called accused. So here the limitation is of 1 month. So I'm just repeating once. The validity of check is 3 months. The check is to be deposited in the bank within the 3 months of its validity. If the check is dishonored, then demand notice is to be issued within 30 days or 1 month. If after receipt of demand notice by the drawer of the check, he has to make payment within 15 days. In case of his failure to make payment, cause of action arises on the 16th day. From 16th day, written complaint petition is to be filed within 1 month. So this is all about limitation. Now comes the question of jurisdiction. The issue of jurisdiction is defined in section 142 of the Negotiable Instruments Act. As per section 142, here I will just go behind and I will tell you a small background of this jurisdiction. Earlier, there were 5 instances of jurisdiction: the place where the complainant resides, the place where the accused resides, the jurisdiction of the bank of the complainant, the jurisdiction of the bank of the accused, that is the Drawer's Bank, and the place from where the notice is issued. But all these concatenation of 5 jurisdiction have been removed by the amendment in 2015, and now there is only one jurisdiction as per section 142, and that is number 1, the case will be filed in a court under whose jurisdiction the branch of the bank is situated where the complainant maintains his account. I am repeating once again. The case will be filed in a court under whose jurisdiction the branch of the bank is situated where the complainant or the holder of the check, in whose name the check is drawn, maintains his account. Here I emphasize on maintains his account. That means कि suppose I am having an account in HDFC Bank in say Dalhousie branch, but I deposit a check in South Kolkata branch, so I cannot file case in a court within whose jurisdiction the South Kolkata branch is situated. Rather, I will have to file case in a court under whose jurisdiction Dalhousie branch is situated. That means where I maintain my account, the account which is debited or credited after check dishonor. This is one thing. Second thing is कि the case can also be filed in a court under whose jurisdiction the branch of the bank of the accused is situated. That is 142(2). That provision is also there. So there are only 2. Now there are 3 important issues on the jurisdiction which has to be clarified. Number 1 is, what if I have say 5 checks of accused and I prefer to deposit 5 checks in my 5 different accounts or different banks at 5 different places, and then I file 5 cases against the accused person at 5 different places to harass him, to create undue pressure on him. Then what will be the result? The result is, as per the amendments in section 142 of Negotiable Instruments Act, all the subsequent cases will be filed in the court where the first case was filed against the same drawer of the check, against the same accused person. Even if all the other 4 checks issued by the same drawer, issued by the same accused person, have been deposited at different places. Number 1. Number 2, if by suppressing this fact, I have filed 5 cases in 5 courts at 5 different places, then upon bringing this fact to the knowledge of the court, by a written petition by the accused person, the court will order for transfer of all those cases to the court where the first case was filed and is pending. So I think I'm clear. First thing, even if there are 5 checks issued by the same drawer, issued by the same accused person, and 5 checks have been deposited at different branches at different places, then also all the cases will be filed in the same court where the first case was filed. Number 1. Number 2, even if 5 different cases are filed at 5 different places, then upon bringing this fact to the knowledge of the court by a written petition by the accused person, the court will transfer all other cases to the same court where the first case was filed and is pending. So this is about jurisdiction. Then comes the various disputes that arise in the course of a check bouncing case. In a check bouncing case, there are various types of disputes that arise. I will try to take up one after another, and even if I miss any, we would request you to point out that, and I will give answer through my comment box. The first is security check. The most common grounds for raising a dispute, for taking recourse to dispute, is that the check was issued as a security check. So, what is the position? So here I make it very clear that even if the check was issued as a security, this is only known to the accused person or to the complainant, but it is not known to the court, or it is not known to any other person. A check becomes a check from the day it bears the date, from the day it bears payee's name, from the date it bears amount, from the date it bears signature. Otherwise, it is not a check. It is just a leaf of check. It does not become instrument. So, that particular check was issued as a security will have to be proved by the accused person by plausible and cogent evidence. Then only it will be admitted to be a security check. And if admitted, then the case will not stand, because the very principle of Negotiable Instruments Act, the very principle of offense, the mens rea of offense under section 138 is the check should be issued against a lawful existing liability. That means it should be current check. So if admitted to be a security check, then it means the check was issued much prior, and at the then time there was no existing liability. So against security check, 138 offense will not lie. But it is very easy than said. It is almost impossible to prove that check was issued as a security check in absence of any written acknowledgement, in absence of any believable data. It is impossible to believe. That is why the Honorable Supreme Court has said in the matter of APS Forex Private Limited versus Shakti International, very recent judgment in 2020 only, February 2020. And before that also there are plethora of judgment that mere bald averment, bald allegation that the check was issued as a security check will not be accepted as a defense. It has to be proved by plausible data. It has to be proved by plausible evidence, by cogent evidence. So that's all about the security check. So I think it's clear. Security check, if admitted, if believed to be a security check by proper cogent evidence, then case under section 138 NI Act will not lie. But it is easier said than done. It is very difficult to prove in absence of any proper written acknowledgement. And if there is no cogent evidence, then it will not be admitted to be a security check, even if actually it was a security check. Number one. Number two is service of demand notice. I have seen in my various cases, the accused person raises the dispute that he has not received the demand notice, even though the demand notice was returned as refused. The accused person says he did not reside at the then time when the notice was sent to that address. So the notice was returned as not known, or left without address, or intimation served, door closed, always absent in my duty hours. These are the common postal endorsements on the returned envelope. The common postal endorsements on returned envelope are left without address, left without intimation, left without instruction, intimation served, absent, always absent in my duty hours, door closed, office closed, house locked, door locked, not claimed, unclaimed, refused. If that be so, then what is the option? The option is all these postal endorsements are considered to be valid service unless contrary is proved. Unless contrary is proved. It is upon the accused, the onus is on the accused to prove that the address is not correct, or at that particular time he was not there, or that he was not in a position to receive the demand notice, or that he had not refused to receive the demand notice. So all these, in absence of all this, the whatever postal endorsement is written will be deemed to be service, again unless the contrary is proved. Even as per the General Clauses Act, Clause 27, a notice, a letter sent by proper prepaid postal stamp at correct address is deemed served unless contrary is proved. So that is another issue and the grounds of dispute. Third is payments dispute. Now, Before I come to the issue of payments dispute, here I will say, here I will throw some light on one very important aspect of check bouncing case, that is presumption of liability. What is presumption of liability? Presumption of liability is also the same principle on contrary, unless contrary is proved. So what is that? Presumption of liability means once the check is issued, when the check is drawn by the drawer of the check and is delivered to the holder of the check, it will be believed, it will be assumed, it will be understood to have been issued towards discharge of a valid existing lawful liability, unless it is rebutted by the accused person by proper cogent evidence. But here, by hundreds of judgments of Supreme Court and their own contradictions in different judgments, I will clarify one thing. The initial onus is on the complainant to prove bona fide of its claim. I am repeating, the initial onus is on the complainant to prove bona fide of its claim. He does not have to establish the liability in its truest sense, but he has definitely to establish some linkage, some thread as to how the amount of check is payable by the accused. So it is called preponderance of liability. So the complainant has to prove the bona fide of claim, number one. Number two is, in the very recent judgment, the Honorable Supreme Court has said that it is prudent on the part of the accused to demand for the capacity of the holder of check for that payment, for that check amount. I will explain this by one example. First, I am repeating once again what I said. The Honorable Supreme Court has said it is prudent on the part of the accused to demand for the bona fide of his financial capacity to the amount of the check. What does it mean? It means that suppose Ram has filed a case under section 138 of NI Act for check dishonor against Shyam for rupees 30 lakhs. But he has not annexed any document, or there is only one document, one handwritten note of receiving 30 lakhs rupees in cash. So Shyam has the authority to cross-examine Ram to prove his bona fide that he has the financial capacity to first give 30 lakhs in cash. If Ram is unable to show his bona fide, if Ram is unable to prove his financial capacity of paying 30 lakhs in cash at the then time of the transaction, then the case will fail, because it will be presumed that check has been misused. The third aspect is dispute pertaining to quality. Here I will explain two issues pertaining to disputes on quality. One is raising of dispute on the issue of quality subsequent to the dishonor of check, and raising of dispute on the issue of quality supported by preponderous I will simplify it. It is becoming a bit issue of dispute on the grounds of quality is split into two parts. One is quality dispute raised subsequent to dishonor of check, and quality dispute raised supported by contemporaneous documents. What is contemporaneous documents? Documents generated instantly at the then time when the material was received. So what are the documents generated when the material was received? Road challan, invoice, and intimation that the received material is of poor quality, is defective quality. That is contemporaneous document. And believe me, take it for granted, if you have that document, then it will be established that the check has been rightly dishonored because the liability against which the check was issued has collapsed due to frustration of transaction, due to poor quality of material supplied. मैं इसे हिंदी में एक बार समझा देता हूं. क्वालिटी के ऊपर में अगर इशू रेज करना है इन द कोर्स ऑफ चेक बाउंसिंग केस, वहां पर हमें दो चीज का ध्यान रखना है कि अगर हम विदाउट एनी कॉन्टेम्पोरेनियस डॉक्यूमेंट हम अगर डिस्प्यूट रेज करते हैं चेक डिसऑनर के बाद, तो वो एडमिसिबल नहीं है. कोर्ट उसे नहीं मानेगा. लेकिन अगर हमारे पास कॉन्टेम्पोरेनियस डॉक्यूमेंट है और उस डॉक्यूमेंट के साथ में, उस डॉक्यूमेंट के बेसिस में अगर हम क्वालिटी डिस्प्यूट रेज किए हैं, एंड इफ अगर वो एस्टैब्लिश कर पाते हैं बाय ऑल द डॉक्यूमेंट्स ऑफ ट्रांजैक्शन, तो कोर्ट के लिए इजी होगा उसको एक्सेप्ट करना. एंड इन दैट केस इट विल बी प्रिज्यूम्ड दैट द ट्रांजैक्शन विच हैज टेकन प्लेस, जो ट्रांजैक्शन हुआ था वो कोलैप्स कर गया बिकॉज ऑफ पुअर क्वालिटी ऑफ सप्लाई ऑफ मटेरियल. एंड इन दैट केस कोर्ट ये मान लेगा कि प्रॉपर लायबिलिटी के अगेंस्ट में चेक इशू नहीं हुआ था. चेक इसलिए इशू हुआ था, वो कंडीशन फुलफिल नहीं हुआ, इसलिए ऑफेंस इज नॉट कंप्लीट. द ट्रांजैक्शन हैज फेल्ड, सो द check has been rightly dishonored, because check has to be issued against a proper existing lawful liability. यहाँ पर liability is not lawful. Hope I am clear on this issue. Third is double notice, and this is the last issue that I am raising. Double notice. As per the statute, डिमांड नोटिस कैन बी इशूड ओनली वंस. मतलब चेक बाउंस होने के बाद में आप सिर्फ एक बार डिमांड नोटिस रेज कर सकते हैं, एक ही बार डिमांड नोटिस भेज सकते हैं. यू कैन सेंड द डिमांड नोटिस ओनली वंस, बिकॉज वंस यू सेंड द डिमांड नोटिस and from the day the person has received the demand notice, his limitation to make payment within 15 days, and thereafter limitation, and there in failure of that, start of cause of action, and after that again start of the limitation to file the case starts. So therefore, notice can be issued only once. That is in the statute. And this was the position till 2013. In 2013, a 3-bench judgment came from Honorable Supreme Court, and that judgment was authored by Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh in the matter of MSR Leathers versus Palyanappan. MSR Leather versus Palyanappan. In that judgment, in that particular case, Honorable Supreme Court held that there is no harm if a check is repeatedly presented in the bank and demand notice is also repeatedly issued, and a fresh cause of action is created every time. There is no harm in this. And after that, the established legal position is followed by various other judgments, and all the judgments relying on this judgment only, that there is no harm if the check has been dishonored and you have failed or missed to issue demand notice. You can deposit the check again. One condition. Second condition, the check has been bounced, demand notice has been issued, but you could not file the case. Again deposit the check, again send the demand notice, and the case will be filed subsequent to the second cause of action. There is no harm in this. I am repeating, even if double demand notice issued, the demand notice issued for the second time, there is no harm in this. After the judgment in the matter of MSR Leathers versus Palyanappan by a 3-bench judgment of Honorable Supreme Court in 2013. So friends, today I have explained you the issues of limitation, jurisdiction, and the various types of disputes that crop up in the course of check bouncing cases. And with this, I think I have covered up all the issues. One issue is left. I will just take 1 second. That is compounding of cases. In one line, I will say any case and all cases under section 138 of NI Act are compoundable in nature, and the cases can be compounded at any stage. There is no harm in it. The only issue is after the insertion of section 148 at the appellate stage, a minimum of 20% of the awarded amount is to be deposited. So that part is there. Otherwise, the case is compoundable but that is also adjustable, and the case is compoundable at any stage. With this, I take your leave. Hope you have liked this video, and if you have liked this video, please subscribe my channel for another video, and my next video will be on director's liability in criminal proceedings. Thank you.